Supercars are back this weekend at Sydney Motorsport Park, one of Australia's most established racing facilities. And come Saturday night, it will also host our first opportunity to watch Gen3 racing under lights. There's a lot of intrigue in the lead up to this event, with some interesting championship headlines and a unique format for this round of racing as well. So let's get stuck into everything you need to know ahead of the next round of the Supercars Championship. Our battleground this weekend is located about 35 minutes outside of Sydney CBD. It's a road course that many fans will actually remember more as Eastern Creek than its current name, Sydney Motorsport Park. But regardless of what you want to call it, this place is just Supercars heartland. It is so affiliated with the V8 Supercars series, hosting many rounds over the years, despite dropping on and off the calendar a few times, but always playing host to a lot of testing, especially pre-season. A lap around here is 3.9 kilometers in length, or 2.4 miles, with 11 turns in an anti-clockwise direction. I would say the risk rating of the track itself is quite low. There's a lot of runoff around here, but it does encourage a lot of close racing, so we still see plenty of incidents. Your journey around this track begins with a high-speed run through the sweeping left-hander of turn 1, which is really important because that takes you down a short chute into turn 2, one of the key overtaking locations on the track. Those battles often continue into turn 3 and down the hill into turn 4 as well, where they usually get resolved, although we can see some fightbacks into turn 5 and then even turn 6 as well. The cars tend to get back in single file through turn 7, but it's usually all on again at turn 8, a double apex right-hander with some tarmac on the exit before the cars have another short chute down to turns 9 and 10. It's a relatively high speed chicane, but the drivers will be knocking off some speed through here as they prepare for the final turn at 11, which is a long left-hander that will torture your tires as you finish up the lap. This track normally sees action all over the place, but I've got three main spots to watch. The first is, of course, turn 1. It's one of the best corners in Australian motorsport, in my opinion. It's so fast on entry, and with the new Gen 3 cars, it's going to be even more of a white knuckle ride because they might be taking even more speed into here thanks to the lower drag, and then of course they have less downforce to actually play with while they're negotiating the corner. So this one could be really exciting, and fans of the sport will know that you can't take it gingerly through here either, because it determines how vulnerable you are going into turn 2, which is one of the major overtaking locations. And the reason why I've actually highlighted it as a spot to watch is because the battles often continue out of this corner and normally sets up some really exciting pack racing through the rest of the lap. So turn 2 is your next spot to watch. And my next one, it's really hard to pick because there's just so much action around here, but I've gone for turn 8. It's quite an inconspicuous corner, but for some reason it just attracts trouble. Of course, one of the most famous incidents being between Mark Skaife and Russell Ingall. Probably a bit brave bringing that one up on the channel, but there's always excitement down here. You often see aggressive lines on entry, both on offense and defense, and sometimes that can lead to a tangle or two. So lots of excitement, hopefully to be had this weekend. Last time we were here, it was actually the season opener for the 2022 championship, starting off with a twilight race, and that was a very strategic affair, with the race being somewhere between a 2 and 3 stopper, which meant the strategy kept that one nice and interesting and alive for the fans. Race 2, however, was all drama, with inclement weather leading to a lot of on-track incidents, including Shane Van Gisbergen, one of the best in the wet, having a huge off at turn 1, but he fought his way back through the pack. In terms of other incidents, Brock Feeney got his Supercars career off to a very physical start, getting close and personal with the Matt Stone Racing drivers down the main straight, and then after the checkered flag, we saw further trouble with Todd Hazelwood aquaplaning into the back of Mark Winterbottom. Frosty was, well, frosty about the damage that resulted from that one, but our race winners were Shane Van Gisbergen on the Saturday, and then Chaz Mostert took that win in the inclement weather on Sunday. As highlighted at the top of the show, we've got a unique format for this round in 2023, starting on Friday, which actually won't see any Supercars action. That's all support categories on the Friday. Become Saturday at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will have Supercars on track for practice 1. Practice 2 will be at 2:10 p.m. Qualifying for the first race of the weekend will be 4:15 p.m. Sydney time, and race 1 under lights 51 laps in length will be at 6:25. Then we move on into Sunday. We go straight into qualifying for the second race of the weekend at 12:35 p.m, followed by that race, a bit of a shorter one actually, which we'll discuss in more detail a bit later on, starting at 3:30 p.m. In terms of the key championship headlines since the last round of racing in Townsville, there's quite a bit to catch up on. In fact, I've decided that I'm probably going to start doing a weekly news recap show. It's trying to take some of these headlines out of the round previews just because there's such big gaps between the rounds that I actually struggle to A, remember everything that's happened in the media, and then B, talk about them in the depth I would like to. Otherwise, these videos would just blow out in length. But that's good news for you guys though, because it should mean you get more frequent and timely Supercars content from myself. But let's catch up on what has happened since the last round. Firstly, Tickford have confirmed their enduro lineups for Sandown and Bathurst, so James Moffat will join Cameron Waters again, Zach Best will join James Courtney, Gary Jacobson will be paired with Thomas Randall, and Tyler Everingham will join Declan Fraser. Jonathan Webb is also making an enduro comeback, partnering with Tim Slade in the Cool Drive entry, and Simona Di Silvestro has also been confirmed today, at the time of recording, to be joining Kai Allen in a DJR wildcard. I'm really excited to see Simona back over. Shane Van Gisbergen is heading back for another NASCAR race, this time around the road course at Indianapolis, but he won't be alone. He's got a Supercars playmate in Brody Kostecki also heading over for his NASCAR debut. And if you haven't seen these two and their awesome battle at Barbagallo from earlier in the year, I will link that down in the description. Fingers crossed they can put on an exciting show at Indy. On the other side of the international talks, it sounds like Supercars have just about secured a deal to go racing in Singapore next year, supporting Formula One. And while not quite as much in the headlines over recent weeks, it still sounds like the New Zealand plans are gathering pace and that we should see Supercars back over in New Zealand in 2024. Gen 3 continues to be an evolving beast, and the cars will see yet another parity adjustment headed into Sydney Motorsport Park this weekend. The Mustangs have a new throttle body which is expected to improve the drivability, which should translate to better tyre wear as well. SMP is actually going to be a really good yardstick, I think, for the parity situation in terms of assessing where it's at, because you've got a good mix of corners that will test that drivability, but also the aero performance of both vehicles as well. So it'll be interesting, and fingers crossed we do see some close racing between the two brands. The other focus for Gen 3 sounds like it's starting to shift towards durability as well, particularly the steering racks, as we get to some really brutal tracks in Sandown, Bathurst, Gold Coast, Adelaide that are really going to strain these machines. And it sounds like the steering racks might be the weak link in the Gen 3 car at the moment, so fingers crossed we see some improvements on that front over the coming months. As for other notes, things that have me either curious or excited headed into this weekend, I'm curious to see if Red Bull have finally found those steering issues that SVG has been complaining about. He's had issues both in Darwin and Townsville with the car not tracking straight while he's braking, giving him all sorts of troubles trying to get time out of that car. So we'll see if it's third time lucky to get that one fixed. It's of course the return of night racing as well this weekend at Sydney Motorsport Park. I must admit, I'm actually more of a fan of the temporary lighting setups that they had in, I think it was 2018 at SMP, and also Barbagallo in more recent years as well. For me, it always seems a bit pointless to do a night race and then light the place up so bright that it's practically daytime again. I actually do prefer those more sort of ad hoc setups where it's actually a lot darker and challenging for the drivers. But nevertheless, it should be a good show. Supercars do a good job of making that night race around SMP really flash and exciting, so fingers crossed it's another good show. And then finally, will this format be a success? It's a really interesting one, and I'm trying to reserve judgment until after the weekend, but it is very odd that there's so much emphasis placed on the Saturday, which I get with that night race, but the actual track running on Sunday is very, very small. Both no practice session. It seems like, they could have put one of the practice sessions on the Sunday to balance things out. And then, of course, it's a shorter race as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how that might impact crowd figures and stuff like that. But yeah, really curious to see how it all goes. But on the plus side, at least the racing and the way teams approach it should be different on the Saturday versus the Sunday. So yeah, curious to see how it goes. Let me know what you think it will pan out like down below. Alright, let's get into some predictions, and as always, these are just a bit of fun. Don't take them too seriously. Most of the time I'm just plucking things out of midair, but I do try to justify my thinking. And my first prediction is a Mostert win this weekend at SMP. Now, this one's probably a bit more of an outside chance because this team have had their up and downs this year, but they are starting to show signs of a breakthrough, and Chaz Mostert on the Saturday, I think it was, back in Townsville, showed some pretty strong form as well. So if that Mustang has had a further tune up and he has got a good history at SMP, I think those things could combine for a race win. I'm going to hedge my bets with my second prediction across 4 different drivers, which is that one of the championship contenders will have a nightmare of a weekend. So this could be either of the Red Bull or the Erebus boys, and I'm going to class the nightmare as not finishing in the top 10 of either race. Now, this one is mostly gut instinct, and both camps have had ups and downs throughout the championship so far, but if they have a bad Saturday, the teams normally put a stop to that snowball and do recover on the Sunday and vice versa. So I'm predicting that that recovery effort is going to end this weekend and that one of the contenders will take a hit in the championship with a rough run around Sydney Motorsport Park. And my final prediction is that Sydney will host one of the best races of the season so far. There's a lot of ingredients coming together that have me excited, whether that's the cars closing up, the teams understanding them more and more, and of course, the great layout around SMP that promotes overtaking and back and forth battling. Throw the strategy question mark on top of that as well, and there's just so many reasons for this competition to really spark this weekend, and fingers crossed we get an exciting show. Let's get into some of your predictions, as I always like to do, and if you do want a chance of getting your own predictions and thoughts and opinions featured here in my videos, be sure to subscribe and keep an eye out for my community posts. I also put polls up throughout the race weekend and after as well, getting your opinion on different things that go down at each racetrack. Now, the first one here is from Xavier, who's predicting that Nick Percat bounces back and gets on the podium, and he's basing this on Nick's past results at SMP. Now, I'm glad I'm not the only one that's feeling a bit of faith in Walkinshaw Andretti United, but Nick Percat's definitely a bit of an outlier, this prediction, because he's had a really rough run. In fact, there's a lot of talk about him potentially losing his WAU seat in 2024. So it would be good to see him get a good result. He has had a couple of race wins here in the past as well. So we'll see. Fingers crossed he does start to turn a corner in his performance. Next prediction comes from SB787. He's predicting pit stop drama from the 2 days and the 2 different race formats. Now, this is a good point actually. It's going to test the teams in different ways. On the Saturday, you've got that whole dance of doing both fuel and tires and all the pressure of a longer race that comes with that. Obviously, more time for a safety car to appear at short notice as well. And then on Sunday, it's pretty much all about getting those tires on and off as quickly as possible. So different factors for the teams to contend with. I've got horrible flashbacks to Erebus, which is one of my favorite teams, and their pit stop nightmares over the years. But fingers crossed everyone stays on top of things. And the final prediction comes from Max Jones, who is predicting a Erebus and AAA or Red Bull sweep of the weekend, but that the Mustangs make up the majority of the top 10. Now, the general trend throughout the season is that the Mustangs seem to be able to do a fairly good job in qualifying, but they do tend to drop down in race conditions, which has been put down to that poor drivability and tire wear that comes with that. So with the latest tweak with that new throttle body, it'll be interesting to see if that's helped the situation, and if it has and all the predictions are correct, we should hopefully see the Mustangs hold their position a little bit more in race conditions. As for myself though, I just want to see a Mustang and a Chev go wheel to wheel for the race win. Beyond the moment to moment action, we do have a championship brewing very nicely in the background. On the driver's front, Will Brown is leading the way just ahead of his teammate in Brody Kostecki. Brock Feeney is the lead Red Bull driver in third, followed by Shane Van Gisbergen, and Chaz Mostert a little bit further behind, but certainly not out of touch with some big points paying rounds coming up. On the team's front, Erebus are also leading the way just ahead of Red Bull Racing. Brad Jones Racing are there in third, and they could potentially be some dark horses this weekend. They have had a result or two around SMP. Tickford Racing are in fourth, and Team 18 are in fifth, and those guys actually just revealed an updated livery for Mark Winterbottom, which looks fantastic. And another side note as well, we've got Shell V-Power Racing, who have started to turn a corner as well. They're in sixth, so expect them to try and continue that championship recovery. And finally, if you enjoy some variety in your motorsport, this weekend has you covered. In addition to Supercars, we're going to see the Australian GTs, the Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge, S5000, Toyota 86s, and the V8 Super Utes, who actually have a record entry list this weekend since they moved over to the dual cabs. I think they've got 21 Utes lined up, and I'm predicting some almighty tank slappers from those guys as well. So plenty to keep us entertained, and that seems like a great point to end my round 7 preview here on Fan at the Fence. Be sure to let me know in the comments below if you've got any last minute predictions or curiosities going into this weekend. As I said, subscribe and keep an eye out for my votes and questions that I'll post throughout the weekend and after it for a chance for them to be featured in my round review, which will come next week. Until then, thank you for your support, treat people like your trackside down there in the comment section, and I will see you in the next one.